Okay. I think this is it. The official rolling thing. Now I can get stressed. Um, so it's been a
Don't tell
while.
yourself that. You're telling yourself that, and it's making it true. Remember?
I know I prefer to express myself so it's out there. It's not like I'm trying to be all professional and secretive about it. That's the theory, but we'll see. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So, today I'm going to try to structure this a little bit. I'm Julian. This is the Boldly Ambivalent podcast. Today I'm talking to Artemis. And I think actually, if it isn't too weird, before we get into the main subject, which do we do first? Introduce ourselves or introduce the subject? I'm going to introduce the subject. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to read the email I sent you to set this off because I thought it was this chaotic mess at the time, but it's actually not a bad summary of what I'm trying to do. And it's more direct than I usually am. So, here's what I said. I only ask that anyone listening keep in mind that this was specifically sent to Artemis, who I feel I can communicate with directly. So if it seems at all harsh, it was not originally intended for public consumption. I've been thinking vaguely about something, and I wondered if you'd like to join me for a podcast to see if we can go further with it than I have on my own. Among the podcasts I listen to with a trans focus, the common conclusion is that while adults who have gone through rigorous psychological exploration are welcome to change themselves as they see fit, it's crucial that as a society we not focus on trans at the expense of the more common, quirky, or gay. We should encourage diversity and acceptance of gender expression as well, e.g., butch women and flouncy men, perhaps especially in the case of autistic and or homosexual children. So this is what I perceive podcasts I listen to have concluded. I'm not saying this is my conclusion. I'm just saying they have concluded this. In so doing, we could save them from the trans trend. And for a good while, this seemed right to me. It seemed to me that that was a sensible conclusion that these podcasters had come to. But I realized I'm uneasy with that being the end of it. Nothing wrong as far as it goes, but even non-medical gender bending, I think, can go too far. So then I sent some pictures to set the scene. I had thought of putting them up, but I don't feel comfortable showing people and talking about them. So all I'd say is I sent pictures of people where it was men who were, for various reasons, presenting themselves more as women. And the question is, even if is there a point where that can go too far? If you mix and match, in one case it was more he considered himself non-binary. Like it looked like a guy with possibly a mustache. I can't remember, and lipstick. So the question was, is that good? Is that gender bending, as they call it? Is that allowing people to express themselves and be comfortable, or is there something wrong with it? Following questions are not a rant, or at least not an angry rant, but I am exasperated and perplexed by some people's intense focus on self-expression through fashion. While I generally want people to dress and accessorize in whatever way is comfortable for them, aren't there social and practical limits? How do we decide what is appropriate for a given situation? When is clothing too provocative? That's for anybody. When is makeup too garish? Again, anybody. When is gender bending objectively disgusting? Is it? When should psychological and aesthetic independence give way to politeness, convention, and concern for others? And why do some people care so much about their appearance? I understand girls wanting to be tomboys in dress and action because that generally means more activity and practical clothing. I care about these a lot. But how can little gay boys be so driven to wear makeup and skirts? Why does that airplane mechanic? Okay, I probably should have left this out. I was showed pictures of this guy who fixes airplanes and dresses up as a goth woman, I would say. That's how I perceive it. Why does he want to wear fishnets if he doesn't want to take part in the full cultural meaning of them? What's left? Am I allowed to say that stripped of their sexual meaning and cultural acceptance, a lot of the more provocative clothing worn by women is impractical, undignified, and just plain bad? Am I wrong? Am I just too old and conventional for my age? So that was it. Yeah, I feel a little bit self-conscious having read that out. Anyway, so okay, that's that. That's the subject. And then I could talk to a lot of people about this potentially because I just want to sort of talk about it, think it through, and see what people think. However, I thought you'd be good, you'd be up for it, and you have some particular personal experience that would make you perhaps both have more credibility and some interesting perspectives. And I thought we'd agree and disagree in interesting ways. That's the hope. So Okay, here you have a choice. Would you like to just give your general spiel for your channel so people know what exactly your area of specialization might be, or would you like to introduce the project you're working on, which is another interesting way of saying sort of what you're about and your approach to the internet, YouTube, that type of thing?
Sure. Yeah, I can kind of maybe briefly do a little bit of both. So my channel, Tea Time with Artemis, I can give the introduction that I give in every single one of my videos, which is welcome to Tea Time, my friends. This is a place where I muse about my gender transition experience and in the process aim to comfort and inspire others to a greater level of self-awareness. I think that's pretty succinct in what I aim to do with the channel. Right alongside my whole discovering of self, I meant to bear that out there for other people to see because I felt that that would be particularly relatable and helpful for people rather than showing some polished product. Just giving them my thoughts and insights as I went with things. And the project that I'm currently working on, a social engagement event, is where I take a setup that encourages people out in public. So I set up a booth and encourage people to come up and talk to me just to have a friendly chat. Because I feel like, at least currently, the social, political environment surrounding transgenderism and anything really relating to that topic has been pretty nuclear. And I find that people want to black and white the issue, and I want to give people a space where they can feel comfortable to just ask questions, or perhaps even just have me empathize with how they feel about things, what they see as being concerns, and be more cooperative and comforting in talking about those things rather than trying to change their mind about something, trying to make something divisive or forceful, any kind of activism in that way, which we usually see activism is very my way or the highway kind of thing. So I have events that I'm working on currently here locally to where I'm located, where I'll be doing that. I'll be setting up and engaging the public and hopefully garnering just some really civil public discourse around it. There may be a lot of explosive moments that happen there, but my goal is to try to de-escalate that to the point where I'm able to leave. They're able to leave that interaction with a positive impression. So we'll see how that goes in general. But I don't claim myself to be an expert, just somebody with practical experience because I've kind of lived this issue for the last, well, it'll be 4 years now in April since I started testosterone and started all this, personal change and exploration. So,
Right. I had this thought inspired by something you just said, and then I lost it again already. Trying to regain it. It's not coming back. Anyways, it was an interesting direction. Yeah, so I guess, okay, but I'd like to just say if there's anything that springs to your mind from what I said, like you were quite enthused when I sent it. So just off the top of your head, things that come to mind. But first, I do want to emphasize something that I may lose track of if I don't emphasize it now, which is that what I found was interesting when I thought about this topic, and the topic is, again, is if someone is whether if there basically is if there are limits or dangers to going expanding the categories of male and female, what they look like, that sort of thing, that's presented by the people I listen to, who I consider to be sensible people, often sensible transsexuals, as I like to call them. It's presented as this is the solution, rather than having a narrow idea and saying, well, if you're kind of girly but you're a guy, then the thing to do is go this medical route and change yourself and present yourself this way and tell people to consider you to be, in this case, female. Instead, just have a guy in a dress if he wants to wear a dress. Why does that have to be a big deal? And that's presented as the final word on it. And I thought, well, yeah, but I think even there you can go too far. And at least I want to have people talk about their opinions on it, even if like someone might want to think it's fine, someone might not, but at least be aware of the mix, and then somehow through that try to have where your culture can be sensitive to the different ways that people might respond, even if you don't agree with them. And so in all of that, my initial thought was that there was something specifically wrong. Most particularly for me, I notice it with men who mix and match kind of, or present themselves in a way that's maybe more feminine, maybe more female, maybe not. It depends on how you look at it. And I realized a lot of this stuff can generalize to everyone. So people, like, I suspect a lot of people would find men with lipstick on, who look like men with lipstick on, particularly disturbing. But then my question is, okay, but is that because there's something about mixing categories? And then the argument will be, well, no, but lipstick is a cultural thing. So then that does, maybe we can learn to not see it as being a female thing, and then you won't find that to be weird. Or someone will say, well, you should get used to it anyways, because what do you mean weird? It's just a way of presenting yourself. I'm getting lost here, but A, maybe the fact that people have a cultural response is valid, because maybe culture is worth something, even if a different culture would feel differently. And B, maybe there's something about, in this case, makeup itself, which is either does is somehow, like, instinctively makes sense to associate with females, or maybe there's something dangerous about it itself, or iffy about it, or visually questionable, or at least to me, maybe there is. So maybe that I just see that when it's not in a culturally common way presented. I'm a little bit chaotic, which is why I brought Artemis in to help me out. Anyway, so I just wanted to make it clear that what I found was interesting is that a lot of these things generalize. It's not saying, I don't know about men in dresses. It's actually, well, okay, let's think about dresses. Is there anything to think about just dresses or skirts? Like, a lot of the clothing, particularly I see this with the more public, maybe, male to female transsexuals, is that they wear pretty provocative clothing that you could call it women's clothing. And so the question is that appropriate, period? Maybe I'm just realizing more the inappropriateness of it because it's on people I'm not accustomed to seeing it on. Anyways, so I just wanted to emphasize that. And then what do you make of this pile?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a few things floating around, but I guess I'll just pick the first one, which is sticking out to me, the lipstick. Okay, so makeup in general. So when I have an issue personally with something, when something causes me to go, ooh, I don't know how, like I'm getting a reaction that's, unsettling. We'll just put it that way. Something that doesn't just feel, smooth and right. Like you said, it could be a cultural association, which is just something that I've learned, within my lifetime. But it could also be something that's, floating around an idea that's really been ingrained for a very, very long time within our consciousness. So, makeup on men and women, if you're just looking at the category of painting your face in some way, we can call that makeup, right? If we're trying to look at it very generally, makeup is something that both men and women have worn throughout history for a very, very long time. You can think about makeup like the tribal facial designs on Maori warriors, so the Pacific Island warriors. So for men, it was made to look very intimidating, right? But it's still makeup, right? And then you can think about geisha, makeup, Japanese women who are meant to be, very aesthetically pleasing for beauty, for performance, and that kind of thing. So what it boils down to, and like with anything, I believe there's the nuance is the most important thing to look at for starters. So with makeup application, how you apply it, the colors that you apply, where you apply it, how much of it you apply makes the difference. So Maori men, you're looking at thick black lines on the face that are meant to accentuate things to look more aggressive. All right. And that's a lot of this all boils down to a biological root for me. So when you're talking about our purpose as humans as a species, if you're just looking at the way we've evolved, if you subscribe to that whole scientific ideology, it's that men are supposed to be more aggressive, the active hunters, and that women, the nurturers, caregivers, the more sexually alluring kind of side of the species. So men's makeup is going to, if it's going to fulfill that natural biological purpose, it should look more masculine. It should make things look objectively to us more aggressive or more intimidating, or accentuate certain features that indicate power and virility and those sorts of things. So how much makeup? It's probably not going to be a lot. It's not going to make them look soft in any way generally, but when you apply makeup to men, and then this is I'm putting this out here as something for you to ponder for a moment. The reason why you might think lipstick, bright red lipstick on a man is unsettling is because the application of bright red colors like that on a place like the lips, which is a more sensual location for us as a species, if you put that on a man, it seems to violate that deeply ingrained biological principle, which is that we don't associate men with sensuality and sexuality and those sorts of more feminine aspects. There's nothing inherently wrong about it. It for most people just causes them to go, ugh, because we're not wired to think that way on that biological level. So for me personally, in general, I don't see most things as a matter of right and wrong. It's just a matter of, okay, my feelings on the subject, where are those coming from and why? And can I do anything about that to, reorient that within myself, or at the very least to just leave that be as it will? Because like you said, there's a reason you have the feelings that you have. There may be some merit to cultural ideas and expectations for things, because again, they have a biological root that goes back thousands of years. That is not something that we can just throw away. It's something that I believe, if we're going to make any kind of progress, quote unquote, as a culture, as a species, as anything, it would be best to acknowledge that deeply ingrained biological response and be respectful of that within other people, and manage it to the best that we can for, I would say, what might be considered productive tolerance. That might be, I don't know, a little bit of a wishy-washy term, and again, very subjective, but that's kind of how I see things in general. Does that make much sense so far?
Yeah. That's the way I look at it. Except when you say it's not good or bad, it's just there's perhaps a biological or a mixture of a biological and cultural reason for having that response. I wonder whether, okay, but is it sufficiently disruptive on account of the way it grates? If you assume that, for example, someone who looks very male wearing lipstick, like given some facial hair of a significant amount,
Right.
is it sufficiently disruptive to enough people? Can you assume that, at least in this culture, that it is sufficiently rude and inconsiderate that it is bad if you care about being rude and inconsiderate? So that, like, it's not bad just sitting there on a guy in the forest, but it's not bad to do it. It's not like, so for example, I often think with stuff I think I talked to you about this the very first time we talked unrecorded, is something I think I have to give credit to my dad for first phrasing it this way, but that with the idea of a pride parade, he thought that was a mistake. The idea was it was a lack of shame celebration, and that it kind of got confused. And that, I'm all for the lack of shame for virtually anything. I think it's useful to have shame for anything for a little while if it's something you can and want to fix, and it motivates you to fix it, like a lot of negative emotions, but you don't want to just get consumed by it. Okay, so likewise, if you want to put makeup on and for some reason you think that might distress people, that doesn't mean it's a dirty, shameful thing, although it could easily feel that way. But it does mean it might be inconsiderate to impose it on other people. And so the big thing is, at what point does that, if you accept all of my points along the way, at what point does that become a reasonable concern for a person? At what point does their own comfort, and I'm shaky on this self-expression thing because I'm really not into it that much myself, to my knowledge. But at what point do they start actually constraining themselves on account of other people? And I think it gets tangled up. People want to get past all the shame stuff, and then they get tied up into the narcissism. This is me. Do me. I actually like it, because I think that's part of it too. Like, if everyone tolerated it, but it was known that they were going, ugh, I don't think that would be considered acceptable by the people who really are out there doing it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just a lot of things going on there that I'd like to touch on. So it can take me a minute to get around to all of it.
This is my problem. It's like every time one of us says something, there's like 5 things explode out of it.
It does. Yeah, it goes so many different ways. I'm gonna try to tie it all together though. So yeah, that does seem to be something that I've noticed. So first of all, in order for something within most human societies to change, this is something that I've personally noticed. It seems as though there is a period of time where there's a group of people that are pushing very aggressively in your face, some, forceful exposure to something in order to bring the public consciousness to a change in viewpoint. Now, I wish personally that it were not that way, because it would be, in my opinion, it would be a whole lot nicer if people were to be, as you said, just respectful of what other people might be thinking, come to, people and say, hey, this is how I feel I would like to express myself. How would you feel about that? Can we talk about that? And then can I be my authentic self around you, while still respecting the way that you feel about this? But that is not how the vast majority of our societal changes have ever happened. It's always, in my viewpoint of history, it's been violence and warfare and forceful, pushing of culture onto people. So in a society that I would like to inhabit, it would be, as you said, where I'm considerate of what you are thinking rather than trying to force change on you so that I can be whatever I want to be, that narcissistic, egocentric sort of, way of being. But it's been that way for so long that I think it's difficult. And I'm certainly not going to sit here and try to offer a solution, because I don't think I have one. um, in order to change that, I think that sort of way things go about changing has kind of been ingrained at a biological level, and it would only change if each individual person said, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to take personal responsibility, and I'm going to start having these conversations, with people. But then it relies on other people being receptive to those types of conversations. So it's a two-sided thing that requires two people to tango there. And we're kind of, personally, I feel like we are at a point in, our species evolution and our, spiritual or mental emotional revolution, where things seem like clown world right now, because we are figuring that out. We're trying to figure out a way to, do things differently. It does, to me, feel like we're at the forefront of all that right now. So to tie that, the lipstick wearing and the dress wearing into, how far is too far, to be considerate, when is it disruptive to society? That ties into women wearing provocative things in the workplace. Let's just say I actually had a discussion with one of my good friends from high school, where this was like the last time that I ever was on Facebook, because I realized that it's a nightmare. Forget trying to have civil discourse on that, social media. But there was a picture that was going around of a young girl who was wearing like a crop top and, booty shorts, and she in high school. And this person was arguing for being able to wear these things, because men should just, keep their predatory gaze to themselves. And it's not my problem that you're distracted by whatever it is that I want to wear. But this goes back to how we are wired as human beings on that biological level, which is reproduction and survival. And so if you are going to have certain bits of you hanging out, I would fully expect that on a very core level, you are going to get some men, if not a lot of them, that are going to just naturally be drawn to look. And if they have any awareness whatsoever, they won't be sitting there, open mouth breathing, knuckle dragging, staring at you. They'll have some discretion there about what they're doing. But the point is that it's there, and it is distracting, and it's not something that they can do anything about, because it's a knee-jerk response. We are wired that way. The animal within us is wired that way. That doesn't mean that they have to act on it. I'm not giving any excuse whatsoever for rape or, any of those things. Not at all. It's a matter of being respectful of that, knee-jerk response that within each of us has, taking responsibility for it, so that we are removing that distraction from other people out of courtesy. And that's really what it is it's not, giving men an excuse to just do whatever they please. No, it's just about being respectful. And there's two sides to that coin. Women have a lot of power when they dress or act certain ways. If they are, very nurturing, very feminine, very empathetic, very caring, I guarantee you there are a lot of men that would just absolutely crawl over broken glass to do anything for, that kind of woman, assuming that they didn't have a ton of, trauma and, they're part of certain movements that are all about resenting women at this point. But I think you catch my drift that, as a woman, you have lots of power in that, in literally just showing certain parts of your body in an even slightly provocative way. So, take in power comes great responsibility, taking responsibility for that rather than just saying, oh, well, it's, the way that I want to dress. Further to your point about why would women even want to dress that way? Personally, I believe that women would want to dress that way because they know that there's power in that. They know that they can get certain things from it, sexual attention, and that's very gratifying to them. And if it weren't for that societal feedback, would they even bother wearing booty shorts? I don't think that there are many women out there who would want a piece of clothing crawling up a crevice uncomfortably for really no reason. To me, it seems like the drive there is a very biological one. It's, I know I can get sexual attention and I know that's powerful. I know that's important and I feel good about it. So I would encourage women to think like, why do you want to wear that piece of clothing in that particular, is it, is it empowering to you, and why is it empowering to you? So there's a whole lot there to consider. But on the same token, if a man wearing red lipstick, is disruptive to society in the same way that a woman wearing short shorts and a crop top would be in the workplace, then by that logic, I think you have a point that it would be inconsiderate of said man to go about in particular environments. Let's just say, I'm not going to say it's anywhere, anytime. But there would be certain circumstances for which being considerate of that, I think, would indicate a degree of emotional intelligence and maturity. But that's me.
That gave me three solid ideas. So see if I can actually structure them together. I'm feeling remarkably organized at the moment for how I've been. Okay. And what I like about these is these are all concessions in the direction of if there are women listening to this, or men who are at all agitated on account of what you just said, I think I have some nice things to say in that direction. I also think it's okay. My phone is telling me that we've got a couple minutes before we run out of time. I can only record this in 30 or 40-minute chunks, so I'm going to try and pause it before I get into the middle of something, and we will return, everyone. So I'll end this, and then I'll send you another link. So
Perfect.